I was standing beneath the string lights of our neighbor's backyard, holding a plate of dry macaroni and overcooked brisket, when my daughter leaned in close and whispered in my ear, "Mom, Dad's gone. He filed for divorce and left the country." My body froze mid-bite, the plastic fork trembling in my hand. I blinked. "What do you mean, gone?" "He left for Spain. I found the papers on the kitchen counter this morning, with his signature already on them. Yours too." "Mine." I stared at her like she was joking, but her face, tight-lipped, pale, panicked, said she wasn't. "You're scaring me, Lucy," I whispered, my voice barely steady. "I think Uncle Ray helped him. I saw them together last week, in Dad's study. They stopped talking when I walked in." That name. Even the sound of it sent something cold crawling up my spine. My husband's younger brother. The one who moved into our guest house after his second divorce and never left. The one who always lingered too long when hugging me. The one who'd knock on my bedroom door when my husband traveled for business, pretending he heard noises outside. I hadn't told anyone, not even Lucy. Now everything was unraveling right in the middle of a backyard birthday party, with kids screaming in the bounce house and music playing like life was normal. I dropped the fork onto the paper plate. It hit with a dull clink. I couldn't feel my hands anymore. Why would he do this? Managed. Lucy looked away. I think it's about the inheritance from Nana Jean." Blinked. "What?" "Dad said something about consolidating assets before moving overseas. Uncle Ray's name is on the new trust." I had to sit. My knees buckled slightly, and Lucy guided me to a foldable chair behind the drink station. Divorce. Forged signature. Overseas. Trust. Didn't feel like real life. Felt like a slow-motion train wreck. But then I remembered something even more horrifying. 3 months ago, when my husband went to Chicago for a week, Ray had come into my room at night. I told myself I was dreaming, that I'd imagined his breath on my neck, that it was all a nightmare. I told myself I was too old to be a victim, too old to matter. But 2 weeks later I started bleeding. I thought it was menopause acting up again, or worse, cancer. The doctor said otherwise. I was pregnant. At 78. They called it a medical miracle. I called it something else entirely. I never told my husband. I never told anyone. I thought I could hide it. I thought it would pass. But now it all made sense. He knew. Somehow he knew. And instead of protecting me, instead of standing by me, he left. Took the money. Took my name off the house. Took the easy road out. Lucy squeezed my hand, tears in her eyes. "Mom, we'll figure this out. But I think Uncle Ray is trying to get custody of everything. I heard him on the phone. He was talking about getting you committed." That was it. That was the moment my shock turned into something else. Fire. I stood up from that foldable chair like I had steel in my spine. Committed. Pregnant with his child. Tossed out of my own life by the very man I once called family. They thought I was done. They thought they had stripped me of everything. My dignity, my name, my rights. But I still had something. Me. And they had no idea who I really was. I walked out of that party with my back straight and my jaw set like stone. Lucy followed, confused. But I didn't say a word until we got into her car. I looked at her. "My baby." The only one who hadn't betrayed me. "Take me to the bank," I said. "But it's Sunday. I know someone who'll open it for me." And that's when I told her the one secret her father and Uncle Ray never figured out. The count. The one I never touched. The one only my mother and I knew existed. The one with just enough left to ruin them both. Lucy gripped the steering wheel tightly as we drove through the quiet streets of Oak Ridge Hills. The sun had set, but the heat still clung to the pavement like sweat on skin. She kept glancing at me like she wasn't sure who was sitting next to her anymore. "Mom, what account are you talking about?" I didn't answer right away. Some things you bury so deep, even you forget they're real. But now that the nightmare had become my reality, I had no choice but to dig them up. "I started it in 1969, I finally said. The year your dad and I got married. Lucy's eyes widened. That long ago. Your Nana Jean told me never to be a fool. Said, a woman should always have something her husband can't touch. She handed me $300 in cash and helped me open a credit union account in her cousin's name. Every month I'd put something aside. Just 20 here, 33. Birthday money. Craft sales. Cash tips. I looked out the window. It was my just in case. I never imagined I'd need it at 78. Lucy didn't speak for a long time. And then softly, how much is in there? I looked at her. Enough to buy back my name. The next morning, I was waiting in front of the old red brick building before the vault even unlocked. Thomas, the branch manager and my godson from church, met me at the back door. He'd always called me Mama Nezzy, even now that he had 2 kids of his own. Is everything okay, Mama Nezzy? He asked, unlocking the secured hallway. No, baby, I said gently. But it will be. We sat down in a private conference room. I handed him the account number from memory, still sharp despite everything life had taken from me. He tapped into the system. I watched his eyebrows shoot up. Ma'am. I raised a brow. There's over $160,000 in this account. All untouched. Accrued interest. Stock dividends. It's solid. Withdraw it. Cash. No. Certified check. And I need a notarized letter. What kind of letter? I want to buy back the deed to the Oak Ridge property. He blinked. That's your house. Not anymore, I said. But it will be again. I have the original deed. And I know Ray never filed the quitclaim properly. I checked before coming here. Thomas sat back in his chair and exhaled. You've got this planned, don't you? Gave him a look. Son, I've lived long enough to see war, give birth without drugs, and survive 3 strokes. You think a weasel like Ray scares me? He smiled then. And it wasn't pity, it was respect. By noon I had what I needed. The check, the letter, and my mother's wedding ring, still tucked in the pocket of the robe Ray thought he owned me in. We pulled into Lucy's driveway and I got a sudden wave of nausea. Because while the money and papers gave me power, they couldn't erase what had already happened. Ray had taken something from me no man ever should. And worse, I was still carrying his child. At 78, I hated my body for betraying me like this. I hated that I didn't fight harder that night. That I let myself pretend it was a dream. That I didn't scream. But shame only wins when silence keeps it secret. Not anymore. Lucy, I said slowly. There's something else you need to know. She looked up from the kitchen island, biting into an apple. What is it, Mom? I sat down on the stool across from her. My fingers trembled as I placed the pregnancy test and the doctor's blood work envelope on the counter. She picked them up confused. Then realization hit her like a freight train. No, he nodded. Her eyes filled with tears. Is it Uncle Ray? Yes. She covered her mouth, horrified. And then she whispered. He did this to you? I didn't tell anyone. I was scared. I thought if I stayed quiet, it would go away. Lucy's hands were shaking. Oh, Mom. I reached out and held her. I felt like the roles had reversed. She was the mother now, holding her broken child. But I wasn't broken. Not anymore. That night I called Ray. I used the phone line he didn't know I still had. My emergency track phone I kept hidden in the pantry. He picked up on the second ring. Hello. It's me, I said coldly. Silence. Then a chuckle. Well, Inez. Didn't think I'd hear from you again. You're a coward, I said. You hid behind your brother. You came into my home. You violated me. And you thought I'd stay quiet. His tone darkened. Be careful, old woman. You don't want to end up senile in a home somewhere. Oh, I'm not going anywhere, I said. But you are. He laughed again. What are you gonna do, file a police report? You don't have proof. Smiled. Who said anything about the police? Then I hung up. He had no idea what I was planning. And I wanted it to stay that way. The next morning, Lucy and I went to the county records office. I filed for a property challenge. I submitted my certified notarized documents. I requested a court hearing. And I hired a lawyer, a sharp-tongued, silver-haired woman named Rowena Clark, who'd once sued a retirement home for locking a resident in her room for 3 days without food. She wasn't cheap. But I wasn't poor. Not anymore. Rowena read my file, sat back and said, "Inez, honey, this man's about to wish he was never born." He nodded. Because it wasn't just about the house. It was about my voice, my body, my life. They tried to erase me. But I had just begun. The court notice was barely dry on the paper when the first sign of panic showed in Ray's voice. He called Lucy. Not me. Not my lawyer. My daughter. Typical of him, thinking he could manipulate the softer one, worm his way in with concern and fake sweetness. "Hey, Lucy," he said on speakerphone as I stood just behind her in the kitchen. "Just checking in, sweetie. I heard there's been some confusion about the house and some legal stuff. You know how these things go, your mom's probably a bit mixed up. I'd hate for her to get too stressed. Maybe we can all meet and talk this out like family." Lucy kept her voice cold. "There's no confusion, Uncle Ray. We're filing to get everything back. Everything you stole. And Mom's memory is clearer than yours ever was." Ray paused, then laughed that greasy, fake little chuckle that always made my stomach turn. "Well now, Lucy, let's not make this messy. You're a smart girl. You know how these things play out in court. Elderly confusion, emotional instability. It doesn't look good. Let's just say, I know people." Lucy's face darkened. "Yeah," she said. "Well, I know someone too." And she turned the phone toward me. I leaned into the mic and said, "Hello, Raymond." He didn't speak. "I'll see you in court. And Ray, wear something black. You'll be mourning the last day you ever thought you could control me." Then she hung up. That night I couldn't sleep. I walked through Lucy's guest bedroom barefoot, the fan buzzing overhead, and stared at the ultrasound photo the doctor had printed for me even though I told him not to. It was blurry. Just a bean. A bean I didn't ask for. But it was there. Inside me. Heartbeat. Second chance. A punishment. I didn't know what to feel. I sat on the bed and clutched it to my chest. Not in grief. Not in love. Just in exhaustion. And that's when I remembered someone. Marjean. My sister's daughter. My niece. A criminal defense attorney in Chicago. Fierce, proud, and once disowned by my husband for being too loud in court. I hadn't spoken to her in 20 years. But family lines meant little now. Blood didn't protect me, maybe this time it could fight for me. I found her number through a church directory I had folded in my Bible for years. And I called. Rang 4 times. Then her voice came through. Confused. Sleepy. "Aunt Inez." I broke down crying. 3 days later, Mara flew in. She came straight from the airport to Lucy's house, still wearing her navy power suit, heels clicking on the tiled entryway. She looked older than I remembered, with gray streaks in her curls and a fire in her eyes that made me feel like a soldier had just walked into the room. "You look good, Auntie," she said, pulling me into a hug. "I feel like dust," I whispered. "Dust can still burn," she replied. She unpacked the files she'd already pulled. Ray's tax records, the suspicious transfers to an overseas account, the trust forged under my name, and even a witness list. Lucy had spoken to neighbors. One of them, Mrs. Dennison, the widow next door, saw Ray enter our home the night my husband left. Mara took it all in and said, "We're not just going after him for property. We're pressing charges for assault." I looked at her, tears in my eyes. "But it's my word against his. And I never reported it. No rape kit. No confession." She held up my blood test results, signed by the doctor. "You're carrying a pregnancy at 78 years old. That alone is a biological impossibility without some very dark interference. The court will ask how it happened. And he'll have to answer." Meanwhile, Ray was unraveling. He showed up unannounced at the edge of Lucy's lawn 2 days later. Sweaty. Nervous. reeking of cheap cologne and old lies. "Inez," he shouted. "Come talk to me. Please." I watched from the upstairs window. Mara called the cops immediately. By the time the patrol car pulled up, Ray was shouting something about forgiveness and family, saying it was all a misunderstanding, and that maybe he'd made a few mistakes, but who hadn't? They asked him to leave. He refused. They cuffed him right there in front of Lucy's azaleas. He looked up at my window before they pushed him into the car. His eyes weren't angry. They were afraid. 3 days before court, I got a certified letter in the mail. It was from Raymond. A handwritten note in crooked, angry scrawl. "I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I was lonely. And you were always so kind to me. Your husband was never good to you. I saw that. I thought I could love you better. Please don't take everything from me. I'm begging you." He ended it with, "If you tell the world, you'll destroy me." I folded the letter, placed it in a clear evidence sleeve, and handed it to Mara. "No," I said. "He destroyed himself." The night before the court hearing, Lucy curled up next to me on the couch. She was quiet for a long time, then finally asked, "Mom, what will you do if the court sides with him?" I took her hand. "I'll still wake up tomorrow. I'll still walk. I'll still be Inez Whitmore. That's more than they ever expected of me." She nodded. "And what about the baby?" Pause. Then softly, "I don't know. But whatever happens, it will be my decision." The courthouse smelled like dust and lemon polish. I clutched Lucy's hand as we walked through the metal detectors, my stomach twisting with every step. Felt like walking into a battlefield barefoot. But I wasn't alone. Mara Jean, in her dark green suit and block heels, led the charge with confidence I hadn't felt in decades. She looked like power, like justice, and most importantly like family that chose me. Courtroom 4B was already buzzing when we entered. Raymond sat at the defense table, hunched in a borrowed blazer, eyes darting everywhere but toward me. He looked smaller, paler, like the weasel he truly was. And beside him, a court-appointed attorney who looked like he was 10 minutes from quitting law altogether. We sat down. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman named Honorable Judith Carver, entered, and the room hushed immediately. She adjusted her glasses and looked at the file before her. "This is a petition to reverse fraudulent property transfers, contest a forged divorce agreement, and initiate charges of elder financial abuse and sexual assault." Her eyes landed on me. "Mrs. Whitmore, you're 78 years old." I stood. My knees trembled, but I stood tall. "Yes, ma'am. You may sit. This will be unusual." She wasn't wrong. Mara opened with fire. She presented the original deed to the Oak Ridge home, along with proof that the so-called quitclaim Ray filed was never completed correctly. The title still listed my name as co-owner. The notarized divorce papers. A sloppy fake with my signature copied from an old anniversary card. Then she dropped the bombshell. "Your Honor, my client is currently 7 weeks pregnant. At 78 years old. The father, Raymond Whitmore, her brother-in-law." Gasps echoed across the courtroom. Ray's face went pale. His lawyer looked like he wanted to vanish into the floor. Judge Carver raised her brow. "Is this confirmed?" Mara slid the sealed medical records forward. "Documented by 2 independent doctors. And we're prepared to call one to testify." The judge studied it. Slowly. Then I looked up. "Mr. Whitmore," she said coldly, "are you prepared to explain how your sister-in-law, an elderly woman under your roof, became pregnant under your care?" Ray stammered. I loved her. I thought we were close." Mara didn't let him finish. "Close. Or predatory. Because I have statements from neighbors who witnessed him sneaking into her room, bank records showing sudden large withdrawals from her pension account, and a note from him, begging her not to speak." She held up the letter, the one I'd kept sealed since that night. "Please don't take everything from me," she read aloud. "If you tell the world, you'll destroy me." The judge stared at him. "Do you deny writing this, Mr. Whitmore?" He squirmed. It was emotional, misunderstood. I was confused. I spoke then. My confusion ended the moment he put his hands on me. Silence. I locked eyes with Ray. You knew I wouldn't say anything. That I was old. Alone. You thought I was weak. My voice cracked, but I kept going. You didn't know I was still a woman. Still a mother. Still someone with a voice. We recessed for lunch, but the courtroom never quieted. Reporters had picked it up. By the time I walked into the hall, my name was already trending online. People whispered. Some stared in disbelief. Others looked at me like I was some kind of miracle. Or victim. Or both. Lucy hugged me tight. You did it, Mama. No matter what happens next. You showed the world. Mara nodded. But we're not done yet. Back in court, the judge ruled swiftly on the property. All assets reverted to Mrs. Inez Whitmore immediately. The Oak Ridge property deed shall be corrected within 10 business days. Any attempt by Mr. Whitmore to enter the premises will result in trespassing charges. Ray's jaw dropped. He tried to stand, but the bailiff stopped him with a hand on the shoulder. Then came the ruling on the abuse. We are forwarding this case to the district attorney's office for criminal prosecution. Additionally, we will place a protective order barring any contact between Mr. Whitmore and the petitioner. I let out the breath I'd been holding for weeks. I had won. Not just the house. Not just my name. I had won myself back. That night, back at Lucy's house, we sat around the dining table eating leftover roast and cornbread. It tasted better than any steak I'd had in my life. Mara raised a glass of sweet tea. To you, Aunt Inez. For surviving what should have broken you. Smiled. To survive, and still standing. But even as we laughed, a shadow loomed over the joy. Because there was still one unanswered question. Baby. Later that evening, as I sat alone in the bathroom, I held the second ultrasound photo in my hand. 8 weeks. Heartbeat. A decision. Lucy knocked gently. You okay? I nodded, though I wasn't sure I was. I have to decide soon, I whispered. Whether to keep it. She didn't say anything right away. Then, whatever you choose, Mom, we'll be okay. You'll be okay. I woke up just after 3 a.m., the house silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the soft snoring of Lucy's dog outside my door. I couldn't sleep. Not with that picture beside my bed. Not with that heartbeat inside me. I sat up slowly, careful not to let my aching joints pop too loudly, and walked barefoot to the kitchen. The tile was cold against my skin, grounding. Real. I made a pot of tea, chamomile and honey, just like my mother used to make when I couldn't sleep as a girl. Then I sat at the kitchen table and stared out the window. And I prayed. Not for a miracle. Not for justice. I prayed for clarity. Because the truth was, I didn't know if I could carry this child. I didn't know if I should. Later that morning I had a quiet talk with Mara. We sat in Lucy's backyard, sunlight filtering through the trees, and I told her everything I hadn't dared speak out loud. I know it wasn't love, I said. I know what Ray did wasn't out of affection or care. It was controlled. Violation. But this child, it didn't ask to be created. Mara listened without judgment. Do you want to keep it? She asked softly. I hesitated. I don't know. Some days I look at the ultrasound and feel sick. Other days I feel strange. Protective. She nodded. That makes sense. This baby is a piece of you. But also a reminder of everything you didn't choose. I wiped my face. I'm not afraid of dying during childbirth. I've faced death before. But I'm scared of resenting this child if I live. I'm scared of raising it in shame. Mara leaned closer. Then don't raise it in shame. If you choose to carry it, raise it in truth. Your story, your strength, your survival. That's the legacy. Her words stayed with me. Because no matter what I decided, this wouldn't be a secret. Not anymore. 2 days later, I went back to Dr. Kenner's office. He greeted me with a warm smile and guided me to the same ultrasound room I'd sat in weeks ago. How's our miracle doing? he asked gently. I flinched a little at the word. Still here, I said. He ran the probe across my stomach and turned the monitor toward me. There it was. The fluttering pulse. The heartbeat. I stared at it and whispered, I'm not ready, but I'm not walking away either. Dr. Kenner looked at me, unsure. So you're keeping it? I nodded slowly. I may not know what I'm doing. I may be too old. But I'm going to carry this child. Not for Ray. Not for revenge. For me. Because my body has been through war. And if it still has the strength to create life, I won't shame that. I'll honor it. He reached for a tissue box and pushed it toward me without saying a word. When I told Lucy, she cried. I'm scared for you, Mama, she said. I'm scared too, I whispered. But I'm more scared of letting what he did define the rest of my life. We went back to court a week later to begin the criminal proceedings. Ray had posted bail and arrived in an ill-fitting suit, pretending to be composed. But when he saw my stomach beginning to curve under my dress, just slightly, his face changed. He looked at me like I was a ghost. Alive, thriving, visible. The judge allowed the trial to begin. Testimonies were read, evidence displayed. And on the second day, the DA introduced a voice recording. Lucy had recorded Ray during a phone call 2 weeks ago, hoping to bait him. It worked. On tape, we heard his voice. You really think anyone's gonna believe a 78-year-old got pregnant? Let her go to court. Let her show her swollen belly if she wants. It's her word against mine. The courtroom fell silent. The judge stared at him for a long time. And then, she allowed the recording into evidence. Outside the courthouse, a small group of women waited with signs that read, Elder abuse is still abuse. Believe her at any age. You're never too old to be a victim or a fighter. I couldn't believe it. I walked up to one of them, an older woman with silver braids and a cane. She looked me in the eyes and said, You're not just fighting for you. You're fighting for all of us. I broke down in her arms. Later that night, I sat alone on Lucy's porch with my tea. The wind rustled the wind chimes I'd carried from the old house. The ones Ray used to hate. I placed my hand gently on my belly. And for the first time I spoke directly to the life inside me. I don't know what kind of world I'm bringing you into, I said quietly. But I promise this. You will never feel unwanted. You will never feel like a mistake. I took a deep breath and continued. I may not be strong every day. But I will always be honest. I will always be yours. And when you ask about your father, I will tell you the truth. But I'll also tell you what came after, the fight, the fire, the freedom. The days leading up to Ray's criminal trial moved slowly, like the world had switched to a different rhythm, a painful one. Each morning, I woke with a heaviness in my bones. Some of it came from age. Most of it from the weight of the truth I now carried, in my womb and in my heart. The belly that once made me feel shame was now making me feel strong. Stronger than I'd ever been. Mara began preparing me for the witness stand. We practiced my testimony in Lucy's living room every evening. She sat across from me, legal pad in hand, asking question after question, some gentle, some sharp, all necessary. She said, They're going to try to twist everything. They'll say your memory is failing, that this pregnancy is a fluke, maybe even fabricated. They'll ask why you never reported the assault immediately. I looked her dead in the eye. Then I'll tell them the truth. I was afraid. But I'm not anymore. She nodded. Good. You'll be cross-examined by someone who wants to make you cry. Don't let him. Don't give him a single tear. Smiled. I haven't cried in front of a man since 1984. We both laughed. But I knew inside, I wasn't invincible. I was just ready. The morning of the trial, Lucy made me breakfast, eggs, toast, and tea. She placed a small note next to my plate. I love you, Mama. You're doing this for all of us. I kissed her forehead and whispered, I hope you never have to be this brave. The courtroom was colder than usual. The air felt stiff like it was holding its breath. Ray sat at the defense table, stiff in his chair, his eyes red and puffy. He looked nothing like the man who once stormed through our home, acting like he owned the walls. Now he looked like he was shrinking in his own skin. But let the truth squeeze him until he breaks. The district attorney called me to the stand. I stood slowly, walked with intention, and took my oath with my hand steady in the air. The DA began gently. Mrs. Whitmore, can you please tell the court in your own words what happened the night of April 4th? Took a breath, and I told them. About the late knock on my bedroom door. About the smell of his cologne. About the way he leaned too close, murmured things I didn't want to hear. The pressure of his hands. My voice couldn't come out. The silence that screamed louder than I ever could. I didn't fight, I admitted. I froze. I told myself it wasn't real. Maybe if I stayed quiet it would end quicker. I told myself I was too old to be a victim. I see now, that was the lie he planted. People in the courtroom wiped their eyes. Some turned away. I didn't look at Ray. Not yet. Then came the cross-examination. Ray's attorney stood slowly. He was a young man in a shiny gray suit who had clearly never looked a woman like me in the eye before. Mrs. Whitmore, he said, trying to sound respectful. You say this event happened months ago. Why didn't you go to the police right away? Because I was ashamed, I said calmly. Because I didn't think anyone would believe me. And because I didn't want to break my daughter's heart. Wouldn't you say you were confused? At your age, hormones can cause all kinds of emotional episodes. I narrowed my eyes. My age doesn't make me confused. Makes me wise. I've lived through wars, buried loved ones, birthed 2 children, and now I'm carrying a third. You think a bit of gray hair makes me unreliable? Whispers in the courtroom. The attorney fumbled. But you never said no, did you? There was no clear no. I didn't say yes, I snapped. And if you need a class on consent, young man, I suggest you take one before you end up sitting where he is. Laughter. Even the judge raised an eyebrow. Mara gave me a proud nod from behind the desk. The attorney muttered, "No further questions," and sat down red in the face. After the testimony, court adjourned for the day. Outside, women surrounded me again. Strangers but sisters in pain. Some hugged me. Some just whispered, "Thank you." But the real surprise came as Lucy and I walked to the car. A tall man in a brown coat stood by the curb. He looked familiar but aged. When he stepped forward, I realized who it was. Benjamin Whitmore. My late husband's other brother. The one who'd moved to Seattle decades ago after a fight with Ray over a business deal. I hadn't seen him since our wedding anniversary in 1991. He approached cautiously. "Inez," he said softly. "I saw everything online. I flew in. I didn't know what to say." "Ray was always a snake," Benjamin continued. "I never thought he'd go this far. Sorry. I should have checked in on you." I stared at him for a long moment. And then I did something I didn't expect. I hugged him. That night, Mara sat at the dining table reviewing notes, and I asked the question that had haunted me for days. If they convict him, what's the sentence? 10 to 15 years minimum. Maybe more. Elder abuse, sexual assault, financial fraud. It adds up. And what if they don't? She looked at me, firm and unshaken. Then we appeal. And we keep fighting. I stood on the porch again, the stars blinking above me, the breeze cool on my cheeks. I held my belly. It was rounding now, subtle but undeniable. "You came from something dark," I whispered. "But you're not the darkness." A single tear slipped down my cheek. "You're the reason I kept going." The courtroom was too quiet. Not silent. Quiet in that eerie, tense way that made you feel every tick of the second hand on the clock. 12 jurors sat in 2 tight rows, their expressions unreadable. The judge adjusted her glasses. Ray sat like a ghost in his seat, visibly trembling, while his lawyer fidgeted with a stack of notes he clearly wouldn't be using anymore. And me. I sat like a stone, one hand folded over the other. "Inhai." belly swelling gently beneath a soft navy dress I'd chosen deliberately, a symbol that I wasn't hiding anything anymore. This was the moment. Has the jury reached a verdict? Judge Carver asked. The forewoman stood, holding a folded sheet of paper. We have, Your Honor. She handed it to the bailiff, who delivered it to the bench. The judge opened it, read, blinked once, and then looked up. In the case of the state versus Raymond Whitmore, on the charges of aggravated elder abuse, sexual assault, and fraud, we find the defendant. My heart pounded in my ears. Guilty on all counts. Cries. A choked sob from somewhere behind me. Lucy, I think. Or maybe one of the women from the support group who came to watch. Ray slumped forward like someone had yanked the bones from his body. His lawyer leaned toward him, whispering frantic instructions. But nothing could help him now. Not lies. Not threats. Not fear. Not anymore. The judge looked over the courtroom with a rare flash of emotion in her eyes. I don't say this lightly, she said. But this case has shown us that abuse wears many faces, and so does strength. She turned to me. Mrs. Whitmore, you have reminded this courtroom and this country that age is not a weakness. That silence is not consent. That survival is not surrender. I nodded slowly, my throat too tight to speak. The sentence was handed down right then and there. I am 22 years old. No possibility of parole for the first 15. Ray was led away in handcuffs. But just before the bailiff turned him toward the back exit, he looked over his shoulder. His eyes met mine. Gone was the swagger, the manipulation, the smugness. He looked like a man who finally realized the world no longer belonged to him. I didn't flinch. Didn't smirk. I simply whispered, I hope you remember me, every single day. Outside the courthouse, the air felt lighter. News vans lined the block. People clapped when I walked out. Some held signs. Justice for Inez. Age is not equal to consent. Stronger than her scars. I was overwhelmed. A young reporter rushed over, microphone in hand. Mrs. Whitmore, do you have anything to say to other women your age who are afraid to speak up? Pause. Then look straight into the camera. Yes, I said. It's never too late to take your life back. It's never too late to speak your truth. Even if your voice shakes, use it. Because silence protects the predator, not the victim. The crowd erupted in applause. That night, back at Lucy's house, we held a quiet dinner. Just the three of us, Lucy, Mara, and me. We didn't talk much. We didn't have to. There was peace in the quiet. For dessert, Lucy brought out a slice of chocolate pie, my favorite, and tucked something into the whipped cream. Tiny blue baby sock. I stared at it for a moment, confused. I saw it at the store, she said, tearing up. It made me think. Maybe you're not just having a baby, Mama. Maybe we're getting a new member of this family. A new start. Mara raised her glass of sparkling cider. To the future. I raised mine. To survive. Later that week we met with an adoption counselor. I wasn't sure yet. Not fully. I wasn't ready to say I'd keep the baby. But I wasn't ready to say goodbye either. The counselor smiled gently. You don't need to decide today. We'll have time. And whatever you choose, we'll support it. That was the one thing I never thought I'd have again. A few days after Ray's sentencing, a letter arrived at Lucy's house. From a woman named Janice Ellington. I remembered her. Ray's first wife. He'd said she was unstable. That she'd left him for a man in Oregon. That she tried to ruin him. But her letter said otherwise. I saw your story in the news. I'm so sorry. I tried to tell people years ago what he was like, but no one believed me. He did similar things to me, controlling, manipulative. He never touched me like he should have. But he always took something from me. My confidence. My family. My safety. You are braver than I ever was. I hope you know that what you did helped more than you'll ever realize. I held the letter close to my heart. Maybe what I went through wasn't just for me. Maybe it helped someone else too. A week later, I returned to the Oak Ridge house. My house. The one he tried to steal. The one he thought I'd never step foot in again. I walked from room to room slowly. Touched the old mantel. The cracked tile by the kitchen sink. The creaky board in the hallway. I ran my hand along the doorframe where Lucy's growth marks were still etched in pencil. And then I went to the room where it happened. I stood in the doorway. Then, without a word, I turned around and walked back out. I wasn't erasing it. I was reclaiming it. I stood in the nursery of my old house. My house. Holding a soft yellow blanket in my hands. The room smelled like lavender and cedar wood polish. Sunlight streamed through the half-open curtains, warming the rocking chair by the window. It had once been the guest room. Now it was something more. I looked down at my belly. 8.5 months. The doctor called it a miracle in motion. I called it mine. And the decision. Made it. But before I tell you what I chose, you need to know what happened next. 3 weeks after Ray's sentencing, Lucy and I were contacted by a woman named Melissa Caraway. She introduced herself as a private investigator from the Elder Justice Division of the state of Illinois. She said, "We've been quietly tracking Raymond Whitmore for years. We suspected financial abuse tied to 2 other older women in Oregon and Texas. But no one had the courage or proof to come forward. Until you." She handed me a file. Inside were photographs, bank statements, notes from women who had since passed away. I stared at it, heart heavy. He had done this before. And they never got justice. Tears filled my eyes, but I didn't cry. Instead, I said, "If there's anything left in his accounts, give it to their families." Mara returned to Chicago, but not before she filed for permanent protective status over me and Lucy. Just in case. The DA said Ray wouldn't see the outside of a prison wall until he was old, gray, and friendless. That was enough. Most days I felt peace. Days I didn't. But healing doesn't happen in one grand moment. It happens slowly, in rocking chairs and garden beds, in honest talks and fresh-baked cornbread, in deep breaths and answered prayers. I gave birth on a Monday. It was storming outside. Thunder cracked open the sky like a warning bell. But inside that delivery room it was quiet, sacred. Lucy held one hand. The nurse held the other. The doctor gave me calm instructions. And I, 78 years old, widowed, betrayed and battered, I breathed, pushed, and then cried. Because the second I heard that baby's voice, his cry, something inside me shattered, and something else was born in its place. They laid him on my chest, red, wrinkled, wailing, but alive. He gripped my finger with surprising strength and I whispered, "It's okay, little one. You made it." We both did. I named him Miles Benjamin Whitmore. Miles because we'd come so far. Benjamin, for the only Whitmore man who had shown me decency. The press wanted interviews. So did publishers. Women's groups. Advocacy boards. Even a movie producer called Lucy's work number. I declined most of them. Fame wasn't what I needed. But I did agree to one thing. Foundation. The Whitmore Shelter for Women Over 60. A quiet house with 4 bedrooms, soft lighting, a nurse on call, and a backyard garden. Place where women like me could go when life turned dark. A place to reclaim their names. To breathe again. To start again. As for Ray, he tried to send another letter. I returned it unopened. Let him sit with silence. Let him feel the weight of my absence. 3 months after Miles was born, I sat on my porch as he napped inside, and Lucy came out with 2 mugs of sweet tea. She said, "You could have given him up, Mama. And no one would have blamed you." He nodded. "I know. But you didn't." "Why?" I looked out at the garden, blooming with summer squash and lemon balm. "Because I couldn't let Ray take everything from me," I said. "And this child, he isn't Ray's. He's mine. He came through something awful, but he's not the product of evil. He's proof that even out of violence, something whole can grow." She wiped her eyes. "You're the strongest person I know." Smiled. "I'm just finally me." The baby stirred inside. I heard his tiny whimper through the monitor and rose slowly to go to him. My back ached. My knees popped. But I walked with purpose. 'Cause I had survived abuse. Because I had reclaimed my home, my name, my voice. Because I had faced the ugliest parts of life. And found beauty on the other side. I stood over Miles's crib, brushing a finger over his soft cheek. "You are not a mistake," I whispered. "You are not ashamed. You are in love. And me. I'm not what happened to me. I'm what I chose to become after." If this story touched your heart, reminded you of quiet strength, and showed you it's never too late to reclaim your life, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your voice matters. Your story matters. You matter.